The central idea. According to this theory, what was going on between James and Paul wasn't just some minor squabble over rules. Nope, this was a deep, foundational conflict. It was a battle between two totally competing visions for what this new religion was even supposed to be.
See, Eisenman's argument is that we're not looking at one movement with a few internal debates. He's saying these were two entirely separate movements that just happened to share an origin story. You had the original community in Jerusalem, led by James, and then you had this completely different thing being built by Paul, and it was designed for a totally different audience.
So who were these two men at the heart of it all? Let's put them side by side, because the way this theory portrays them, they couldn't be more different. They're total opposites.
And the contrast is just stark. On one side, you have James, called the Just. He's the leader in Jerusalem, totally rooted in Jewish law. The theory calls him an ultra-legal pietist, basically someone who is incredibly devoted to following religious law to the letter. His movement is presented as the one true continuation of Judaism. And then there's Paul. He's the Hellenized innovator, reaching out to non-Jews, the Gentiles. And this is a big one. The theory claims he was compromised by Rome and that he created something entirely new, which Eisman calls a Pauline Christ cult. And that word Hellenized is absolutely key here. It just means taking a religion and mixing it with Greek culture and philosophy. The argument is that Paul did this on purpose to make his message more appealing to the wider Roman world, but in the process, he basically stripped it of its original Jewish soul. Okay, so we've met our two main characters. Now, what exactly were they fighting about? What was the actual battleground for their beliefs? Well, according to Eisenman's thesis, they clashed on three huge critical issues. And wow, the divide was deep. Let's break it down. First, Gentile converts. James's side said they absolutely had to follow Jewish law. Paul's side, no law required. Then, theology, the very nature of Jesus. For James's group, Jesus was a human, a messianic revolutionary. For Paul, he was a supernatural God-man. And maybe the most critical difference, politics. James was leading what was essentially a Jewish resistance movement against Rome. Paul, on the other hand, was all about pro-Roman accommodation. They were polar opposites. And this leads to a really heavy accusation. Paul is called a pro-Roman quisling. Now, a quisling is a traitor who collaborates with an enemy occupation. So the argument here is that Paul's entire theology was just a form of cultural surrender. It was designed to water down the movement's revolutionary political message to make it harmless and acceptable to the Roman Empire. Okay, so all of this brings us to the most provocative, most explosive part of this whole theory. The idea that the historical record we all rely on, the New Testament itself, was deliberately changed. The core of this argument is a really radical